Hello there. Welcome to the SPS podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk about why frustration is a positive and how you can use it as a compass to help you achieve your goals. Let the credits roll. Welcome to the SPS podcast, the Self-Performance Strategies podcast. Unlocking the secrets to success and unlocking the secrets to self-performance so you can improve mentally, emotionally, and physically. The SPS podcast is brought to you by the Pro Accelerator program, helping business owners and business leaders save at least 10 working hours a week, improve their focus, and make more money. If that sounds like something you're interested in, check out the show notes and follow the links. But let's now jump into this episode. Hello, welcome one and all. We are in episode 33 of the SPS podcast. And in this episode of the Self-Performance Strategies podcast, we are going to talk about frustration being a positive. We're going to talk about why frustration is actually a compass that you can use to help you achieve your goals. And to start this episode, like I do of all the episodes, let's frame this conversation with a quote. This one comes from Marley Diaz, and she said, "Frustration is the fuel that can lead to the development of a innovative and useful idea." And I would have to say, I 100% agree with Marley with that one. I actually think frustration is the reason why we develop. Frustration is behind us wanting to get better. If you think about developing a hobby or a skill or a craft, there's a certain point you will get frustrated. Now, I know some people, when they get frustrated, they quit, but that mild frustration with trying to improve your cooking skills, your leadership skills, your copywriting skills, your sound engineering skills, whatever that is in your world, in your life, that frustration is telling you that you think you can do better, that you have the skills, knowledge, and abilities to be better than your current situation. So you're frustrated because you're frustrated with the fact that whatever you're doing right now is not at a level which you feel like you can get to. And then if we follow that frustration, we should be able to get better within those areas that we're trying to develop. But unfortunately, a lot of people do two things. They either see something as a frustration and they drop it, or they fight frustration with frustration. And I fought frustration and I lost. For parts of my adult life, I was frustrated quite a lot. Why? Because I always thought there was a better way to do things. In the environments I used to work in before starting my own business, I would push back, I would fight, not physically, but I would push back and get frustrated with the ideas coming down from leaders, from head office, from different managers. And while my frustrations were valid in most cases, maybe not all cases, my frustration didn't help the situation. My obvious frustration didn't help the situation. I would often feel like I was the complaining person in the group or being the grumpy one. But it was always because I felt like when I heard something, some process or some system or some rollout of what we were trying to do, that I was like, we can do better. We can do better than this. Is that honestly how we're going to roll this out? We're missing things here. Now, I believe in change. I do. I 100% believe in change. And I think we should always be moving things forward in our life, in our businesses, whether we work in a corporate environment, whether we're trying to start our own business, whether we're in our own business, whether we're trying to get better at fitness, health, mindset, whatever that is, we need to be expanding and moving things forward. But I got frustrated because the changes I saw in the corporate world where I used to work, in the sales world where I used to work, didn't go far enough or were shallow ideas to cover up deeper cultural issues. And that's specifically in one of the larger corporate jobs I used to work in. I felt like everything was a rollout of a new system or a new process that was layered on top of a thing that was layered on top of another thing that didn't really get to the root cause of the issues in the organization, and it frustrated the hell out of me. But I fell into the trap of being frustrated and then feeling like I couldn't do anything to change or influence the outcome. So I got frustrated with frustration. It wasn't a great way to act in those situations. And looking back, I know I could have come at things with a more positive or supportive tone. When I do think about it, I'm like, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, maybe I could have been a bit more positive. But I will say it can be hard to stay upbeat when you see the same mistakes being repeated. And in a couple of corporate jobs I worked in, I definitely feel like I saw that. But that's a different story for another podcast, maybe. But what I will say, and where I want to focus on this episode about frustration being a positive, when I finally left the corporate world, I thought I would be less frustrated. And, well, I was wrong, because I had made frustration a part of my life, if that makes sense. And let me go into it a bit deeper. For the first 3 to 6 months, I fought frustration, but didn't do much to change. I didn't really change the way that I approach things. And I maybe worked a little harder, but I complained and felt uncomfortable. I didn't shed my old way of working or my old way of thinking about my work. I had become a bit of a victim of frustration. And this is fairly recent. I got into a bit of a pattern. I'd forgotten I had power over how to use frustration positively. I forgot I had that power. I forgot I could use frustration as a compass. I had seen what was frustrating me, but then I kind of froze with it and didn't do much to change my behavior. I repeated the same mistakes. I repeated the same actions. I expected it to get better, and it didn't. But then it hit me hard. I was fighting frustration with frustration, as I've mentioned. I was not using frustration as a compass, as I've mentioned. And those things hit me pretty hard. I drank and partied a lot in my 20s and early 30s, which I've talked about on the podcast before. And if you don't know, that's kind of my background. I went to university, and instead of getting a degree, I still got a degree, but I really got a PhD in underground nightclubs and alcohol. And then I continued into my 20s, late 20s. And then, I finally, at the back end of my 20s, I was frustrated with my life. So I decided to change things. But at that point in my life, I actually saw frustration as a guide. Because I told myself, Steve, here, you're not happy. You're not happy with this current situation. You're frustrated with the way you're showing up in your life, in your job, your health, your wealth, your relationships. So do something about it. So I used the frustration, the fact that I was frustrated on a daily basis, to do something. And I did. And I changed. The corporate world had tricked me into feeling that I could only do so much when it came to my frustration. And this is the big switch. When it came to personal development and getting better in life, I had 100% control. But then within my work environment, when you're in the corporate world, there's only so much that you can actually influence. There's only so much you can change. There are limitations to the changes you can make. Or so I was told in the corporate world. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are trapped by this in a lot of these big bureaucratic organizations. They you can't change too much, but it's actually radical change and radical truth and radical honesty that all these organizations really need. But in your life, frustration really should be a tool, a compass, a map. And that's the way I use it outside of work to help me navigate how to get better in my mental, emotional, and physical state. And the only limitations we have are the ones we set ourselves when it comes to that environment. But going back to the story here and connecting the dots, I had gotten myself into the mindset that frustration wasn't really something I could fully control myself. As I mentioned, the hangover from the corporate world, starting my own business, and then really getting back in touch with this idea that frustration isn't a barrier, it's actually a compass. So I sat down and asked myself, with my business, what was I frustrated with? And once I got that answer, I asked, what can I do to improve this frustration? And once I got that answer, I took action. So that's what I did. Positive results began to stack. and I felt much happier and more satisfied with myself. And this is going back, I would say, about a year and a half ago. Last summer of 2022, so summer of 2021, I finally got to the point where I was like, well, why am I frustrated? Well, I'm frustrated because this isn't happening. Well, how can I fix this frustration? Well, I can do this. So I started doing that. I started doing something different, and I started getting results. Now I ask myself on a weekly basis, what was the largest struggle I faced last week? What was the largest frustration I faced last week? And then I look for ways to improve on that. I look for ways to navigate that. And I use frustration as a positive point to make my life go smoother and to travel faster towards my goals. Frustration is now my friend again. It whispers to me on a weekly basis in my ear, telling me how I can improve, telling me the direction I have got to move in. So my point that I want to make at the first part of this 33rd episode of the SPS podcast is I want you to fall in love with frustration. Trust me when I say this. 99% of business owners who I work with see frustration as a negative. And I'm here to tell you 99% of them are wrong. We've already uncovered this in this episode so far, that frustration is a positive. But you probably have lost count of the times that you've experienced frustration. Yeah? Would you agree with that? Obviously. You might have spent years feeling it daily. You've probably felt its presence and assumed it was a negative to feel like this, to feel that frustration. You might have fought back, you pushed back on it, and thought that you were doing the right thing to push back on frustration. But as we've already uncovered again, we're looking at frustration differently here. Frustration is healthy. It's a sign of progress. It's a sign you want to improve. Despite the accompanying negative emotions, as you get closer to your goals, you must understand that frustration is part of inner growth, because the closer you get to your goals, and when you stumble and fall and fail, you will feel frustration. And without frustration in your life would be incredibly dull. Think about that for a second. If you didn't have frustration, think of all the good things you have in your life. If you didn't have frustration, would you have got that promotion? Would you have started that business? Would you have figured that thing out? Would you have got better at that skill? No. Frustration helped you get there. Frustration was a positive. You were frustrated with something, so you spent hours getting better at it. And then it no longer was a frustration. But we forget about that. I said at the start of the podcast, there's two things that people do with frustration. They either give up when frustration appears, believing a goal is now unachievable, or they keep going until that frustration is removed. So if you are taking the second option, which you do in a lot of areas of your life, why wouldn't frustration be a positive? Because you've got to explore frustration. Because it's trying to tell you you want to change. Sit with the frustration, lean into it, let the emotion wash over you. How does it feel? Where do you feel it? What does it look like? What are you frustrated with? Get clear on it. Get to the root cause. Pinpoint the pain first, and then you'll be able to fix the frustration. Once you've noticed what the pain is, organize your shit. Organize a system around it. Now you've felt the frustration, tapped into that part of you that wants to improve, it's time to get organized. It's time to actually work out a plan and start executing around a plan that's going to allow you to turn that frustration into a positive and overcome your barriers. Remove the frustration by either dropping projects and parts of you that are holding you back, or by starting projects and improving parts of you that need improved. Create new targets, develop new plans, act on the change, lean into the change. As I've mentioned already a number of times in this podcast, I want you to start seeing frustration as the compass to your next level. Because you're not going to quit. I know you're not going to quit. You're either going to learn how to get past the frustration, or you're going to hire, delegate, or find somebody to help you with that frustration. In your life, the area that you're frustrated with is the exact area you need to improve. You are frustrated because you are stuck and you want to do better. You're telling yourself exactly how to level up. You're literally telling yourself, hey, I'm really frustrated with this area of my life. I'm really frustrated with not having more money, not having more clients, not having this opportunity, that opportunity, whatever that is. I'm not very good at cooking. I'm not very good at this exercise. I'm not very good at my cardio. I'm not very good at relationships or networking, whatever that is. The thing that you're frustrated with is the exact area where you can improve. And that improvement, as I alluded to a minute ago there, that improvement could be hiring, spending money, purchasing something, buying into a program, hiring a coach, whatever that is. The frustration doesn't always have to be you doing the work. It could be somebody else coming in to help you with the work. And that's a huge positive as well. Because we're not going to quit. We're not going to walk away from frustration. We're going to find ways past frustration, and we're going to use frustration as a positive. Frustration drives success. It drives success. Every client I speak with is frustrated with something. Overwhelm, procrastination, lack of direction, lack of motivation, lack of results. What do you think we fix first when I'm working with somebody? What do you think we look at? We fix the frustration. Clients, when they first hire me, the first thing I go to is like, well, what's the big problem? What's the bleeding neck issue in your life? Oh, I'm frustrated with this. I'm not going to leave that until week 6 working with somebody. Of course, you're going to go in and fix the frustration first. But the frustration tells me as a coach, oh, that's the area they need help with. So the frustration in your life right now is telling you what you need to fix. And if you hire someone to help you, the frustration is why you're hiring that person. So if you hire a copywriter, if you hire someone to help you bring leads in, if you're hiring a fitness coach, if you're hiring a language coach, you're hiring these people because you have a frustration with something, because you need to fix something in your life. And that's the way to success. It is the way to success. So stop fighting frustration. Fall in love with frustration. Frustration is a positive. It's a part of your journey. From my personal experiences at the start of this podcast, I've been able to tell you that I used to fight frustration, but it's not to be fought with. It's to be embraced. I know the bigger the goal, the greater the frustration will be, because you're pushing yourself to your limits, because the big goals demand big changes mentally, emotionally, and physically. But if you fight frustration, you'll lose. You'll end up in situations where you're just frustrated about being frustrated. But if you look at frustration as a compass, you will be able to find a way out. You'll be able to find a way around it, whether that's getting better with your own skill sets, whether that's hiring somebody, whether that's working with somebody, whatever that is. Stop fighting frustration. Fall in love with the idea that frustration is a compass. And that was the 33rd episode of the SPS podcast. Thank you very much for joining me. But please do reach out to me. Let me know what you think of the podcast. You can send me a DM on Twitter at Steve Timoney. It's SteveTimoney. Or come on over to my website. That's stephentimoney.com. StevenTimoney.com. And you can check out everything I do there, from my blog post, join my newsletter, even check out my coaching offers. Thanks very much for joining me for this episode. Absolutely appreciate you for listening this far. We will speak to you in the next one. Make it a great one.